What is shaking? It is the Golden Microphone, episode 2-1. We're over 20 episodes into the Golden Microphone. Thanks to all of you. I'm having a good one today. How are you, Mara?
Oh, I'm great.
Yes! We are going to talk about something that is near and dear to anyone, parents, or anyone who's been in the education system, or anyone who's gone to school before. We're going to talk about creating the perfect learning environment for a child, your child, and even creating a nice little sustainable business out of it. Today, we're going to be talking about that. But before we go and talk any more about that, I got a couple more of these left. I don't know if I can show you. I got one box left of these books left. It's called Uncovering the Life of Your Dreams. Everybody who's been jumping into the Beyond Resilient Facebook group, you're getting this book for free. Just go to that pin and give me your name and give me your address, and I'll send you this book. It's $25 from Bruce Schneider. If you want to go into Barnes & Noble, in Canada, if you want to pay $30 for it, that's fine. You can pay $30, or you can go in and get an actual physical copy mailed to you free of charge from the Beyond Resilient crew. That's all we got to do. Now, if you want, you can give a couple bucks via PayPal and help me send this out to maybe some folks who can't afford like a $25 book. $25 is quite a bit nowadays. But the knowledge in this, the knowledge about finding your purpose, living with passion, it's everything. It's everything nowadays. From us living with purpose and passion to our kids living with purpose and passion. So remember that. Remember this book. Go to Beyond Resilient. Go and get it while supplies last. I am officially running out, so you're not going to hear me talking about this much more. Again, my name is Mark Cordone. I'm a positive psychologist. What does that mean? Two things. It's about feeling good and functioning well. Feeling good from the standpoint of elite sports, feeling good from the standpoint of entrepreneurship, feeling good from the standpoint of academics, feeling good in anything that you do in life. That's what I coach around. That's what my clients are striving towards, and that's what I want you to feel day in and day out. Now, Mara, I have a question for you. Are you feeling good and functioning well today?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. So for those of you out there who are feeling good and functioning well, whether it's live or on the replay, let's see some hearts. Mara, can you make a heart with me? Don't make us beg. Don't make us beg for some hearts if you're feeling good and functioning well. Now, if you had one of those weekends and you're like, oh my God, it's Monday. No, I'm not feeling good. I'm not functioning too well. Or you're doing one of the two. You're just not doing both simultaneously. Give me a thumbs up. It is okay to have those days, y'all. It's okay to have those days. We're going to have them. But also at the same time, that's why we strive for feeling good and functioning well. Now, this is the final thing. If you're just straight up optimistic, whether it be you're having a shitty week or you're having an amazing week, give me a big old wow face. Mara, can you give me a
Wait, no, I'm doing it now. I'm putting my laugh on. I can't actually do it while we're live. I can't do like the heart, the heart split. But I have to open up my phone. Wait, let's see if I can do it. No, I'm just kidding.
Give me a big old wow face. Well, I think we caught her off guard with that one. But before we even talk about sort of creating that perfect learning environment for our child, let us know where you're coming from, whether it be live, whether it be on the replay. Check in with us. Let us know how you're doing today. And with that said, Mara, what's your story?
Oh my God, Mark. So I'll give you like the really compressed. I was a public school teacher for a really long time. And there were so many amazing kids that I could not help. So I am on a mission to make sure that we're not doing this thing. I don't know what it is. Why is it that people think it's okay to say, I was talking to you earlier, Mark, and I said, do you love your job? Do you love being a coach?
Yeah.
I love being an entrepreneur. I love working with families to help their kids find the best educational setting. And now I help families build schools. It's like the coolest job on the planet, building micro schools. So here's my deal. Like, I love my job. You love your job. Why would it be okay if you're out there and you're an entrepreneur or you have a job that you love? Why would you let your kids stay in a setting that they don't love? I wake up in the morning and I can't wait to get started on my work. And I want that for your kid. Like, kids should have that. I don't think we would have we wouldn't have as many of these shootings and bullying and all these really ugly things that are going on in school if kids loved to go to school.
Mm. So talk to me about this. What inspired you to become a teacher in the first place?
Well, I was actually studying psychology undergrad, and I was trying to figure out what was I going to do with that. And actually, you probably know this, you can't do a whole lot with a bachelor's in psychology. No. I was babysitting for one of my professors, and she said to me, you're fantastic with kids. Have you ever thought of becoming a teacher? And I will be honest with you, I had never thought of it. And as soon as she said it, it was like I had this knowingness, like, oh my God, absolutely yes. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. I love kids, and I could get paid to work with kids all day. It feels more like playing and a lot less like work. And I had a glorious 17 years doing that as an inner city school teacher in Pittsburgh, in my hometown. Became an administrator thinking I would help change education that way. And it didn't work out that way. I actually got downsized 5 years ago and decided to build my own business. And now I've written 2 books, and now I coach and consult clients on how to figure out what's the best educational setting for their kid. And if they can't find that, I help them build a school for their kid. And it's amazing. And it turns out it's a business for them. It benefits their kids. It makes a huge difference in their community. People want to see change happen, but very few people know what to do. I love people who say, we need change in education. And then they don't tell you what to go do to make that happen. Sure.
I feel like the idea of what you're talking about, sort of mixing entrepreneurialism with creating a more ideal system for learning, is such a do-it-yourself way of changing the education system around, and it's such a great way of doing it versus saying, oh, that piece of crap director of education is doing nothing, blah 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 blah. The systems are broken. Is that part of the reason why you went from? I mean, you were a part of a traditional system for 17 years. You know the ins and outs of that. Why not go back to it and serve it and change that? Why come out and introduce this concept that is, I would say, micro schools, is fairly new, right? 5 to 10 years we were talking about.
5 or 10 years. I mean, basically though, Mark, it's the one-room schoolhouse of the past, re-envisioned, recreated. So it has a lot of the best elements from that. Small, multi-aged, personalized for the kids. Everybody knows everybody. Usually it's based in the community, so everybody knows everybody. Kids can go faster or slower based on, their own skill sets and their own strengths and weaknesses, all of that kind of thing. Lots of activities in the community. Projects spring up based on what's going on in the community and what's needed, what kids are interested in. So in your inner cities, you've got micro schools that are doing programming or robotics. And in rural communities, you've got kids out in the forest learning out there. You've got kids doing business incubation, and you've got kids doing, business pop-ups. You have all kinds of things going on. I just interviewed somebody today. She has a micro school in Massachusetts. She's got kids doing business incubation. They're out on a farm once a week. They're learning about sustainable agriculture. I mean, whatever the kids want to be learning about, they're out doing that instead of having like set curriculum that a school district or a state or a government have created.
Sure. Now, what I'm thinking about right now is that these micro schools sort of being almost streamlined to what children are interested in, as well as sort of the areas that they're put in. How do you feel about the fact that, as someone goes through certain micro schools or experiences in those micro schools, we're having children growing up with complete differentiation of experience? Mm-hmm. Because what would you say to that, as a good or a bad?
Well, I'd say to like people watching, what would you say? What's the world like out there? Is it all one shape and form, or is it really differentiated? And I think the answer is the latter. So the fact that the world out there doesn't look anything like some standardized formulatic, world. The world is very different, and the kind of demands of what people need to be able to do are very different. And so everybody learning in a different way makes sense. It's better preparation for what's coming, which we have no idea what's coming.
Sure. And because the reason I put that out there is because I could see someone saying, well, I see this really cool idea of a micro school, but what if my kid falls behind? What if my kid falls behind in terms of whatever that status quo of learning is? Does that make sense?
Well, first of all, I think that's worrying about something that generally I haven't seen happening. In fact, what I'm seeing from most micro school operators is that the kids are accelerating their learning. The gal that I talked to today, 40% of her kids finished a year's worth of curriculum in February. Now think about that. If your kid was done with second grade in February and they were sitting in a second grade classroom, what would they do?
Yeah.
They would still do second grade content. But in a micro school, if your second grade child finishes second grade in February, then they start in third grade.
Yep.
Start on the next level of content. So, but if your child, there's not in the micro schools, they're not the educators, the owners are not looking at it as falling behind. They're looking at it as, I just need a little more time with this content. Yep. And I can actually give the child that time because I don't have some standardized assessment that's coming up that I've got to have you ready for. I don't have my job on the line because I'm being evaluated by how many kids passed the test and how many kids are moving on to the next grade level, and how teachers are really stressed out.
Yep. Absolutely. I have a few things that I want to throw out for you. It looks like you got some people worked up today, like Johnny B. It looks like he's talking about his own experience, from what he remembers, social groups and cliques, looking for relationships, love, sort of, what's going on this weekend. So not really sort of working for the weekend, like not really being engaged with the present. Food. I do remember food. A bunch of other things that have nothing to do with education.
Yeah. So here's what he's talking about. Here's what he's talking about, Mark. Those first 5 things, kids care about them because if those are the things that are important to kids, then we actually need to give time for those things. And the fact that kids are spending so much time thinking about those things is because we've taken those away. So I don't know, you're a lot younger than me, but when I went to school, I had half an hour recess before lunch, and then I had recess at the end of the day. And that was time where I could talk to and when we went to lunch, we could sit and talk to our friends. I don't know if you've been in a school lately, but in a lot of places, kids are not allowed to talk at lunch. I mean, seriously.
What is going on? That was punishment for me when I was not allowed to talk at lunch. That was punishment.
So one of the things that happens in micro schools is because, you've got a small group of kids, you can allow them to have their discussions about what happened last night, what they're doing tomorrow, what they're doing this weekend. You can incorporate those things into what you're actually learning about.
Okay. So I want to throw this out there. I could technically teach a beginner's guide to negotiation strategy and or let's just say a beginner's guide to negotiation strategy as taught through Pokemon cards or Pokemon the game. I could do that.
Yeah.
And what I see happening is sort of not only the level of engagement, the level of fun, but you're picking up on the principles of, when it's time to put the Pokemon cards down, you still know how to negotiate with others, right? And that's what I'm beginning to pick up with this idea of micro schools is that
sure.
It's not an abandonment of traditional learning. It's more of an enhancement of it. And it sounds like there's also a feedback mechanism that's built into the smaller system that allows you to pace at a pace that works for somebody, and especially, especially nowadays, I tell somebody, I tell some folks who are like, should I go to college or should I do something else? I'm like, well, you do know that you can get the education of college from just watching YouTube. Like when I still need to learn a regression analysis, I just turn on a YouTube now. I don't go through my full semester of quantitative statistics in my PhD program anymore. No. So learning is a much different thing nowadays. Bonnie wants you to know that she loves your point about learning happening in different ways. Bonnie, thank you for responding. Sampath just wants to say hello, everybody. It's good to see you, Sampath. Hope you're having a flourishing day. Hope you made a wow face for us. So talk to us a little bit more about the components of what makes a micro school. What, because you're like teachers are under a different type of performance setting, our children are, but what exactly is the composition of the micro school?
Well, it really depends on where you are. So, if, we're here in the US, it's a little bit of a hack, actually. Micro schools are a little bit of a hack. So you figure out what the regulations are in your state, and then you create something that works within those regulations. So I have a client in Florida. She can basically do whatever she wants because the regulations are really lax. I have a client in Maryland, and the state regulations around education are much more strict. So we're going to be using a hack for her school. It's going to open up as a homeschool resource center / tutoring center to begin, run for a year, and then apply for private school licensing so that all of the components that you would expect to see are up and running. But depending on where you are, there's several different ways around it. So and we're using the term school to actually represent a lot of different kinds of configurations for learning. And that's intentional because I think a lot of what the micro school movement is trying to do is to take back the word school and have it mean something much broader than what it means right now.
Okay, so what are some different configurations for learning that you're seeing nowadays? Okay,
so my first book, I'm going to give a plug. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready for it.
This is. I was telling Mark earlier. I have Irish twins. This is my first baby, which came out last year. It'll be in bookstores on May 1st. It's called Help, My Child Hates School, an Awakened Parent's Guide to Action. And basically it tells you as a parent, if your kid doesn't like school, here's how you figure out what makes them tick. Here's how you get them in a school that they love. And there are so many options. So, we've got public schools and charter schools and private schools of all types. We've got Montessori or Reggio Emiliano. We've got Waldorf schools. We've got forest schools and nature schools. And so you need to know that it's all out there. Then we've got homeschooling and unschooling and road schooling and world schooling. These are all terms that the average person doesn't even know that these things are possible.
Sure. What's unschooling, by the way?
Unschooling is basically a movement where the parents sign their child out as a homeschooler, and then the child learns. Think about it, Mark. When you were born, nobody taught you to speak. Nobody taught you to walk. You figured it out yourself. So unschooling borrows from that, this belief that we're all built innately as learners, and that sometimes school actually kills that in us. So the unschooling movement really puts learning back into the hands of the child and waits for the kid to figure out what they're passionate about and then just to go for it. And the parent guides investigations. They use a lot of inquiry kind of methods to help their children to learn.
That's freaking interesting. And I see a lot of trust being thrown back in the child, like rather than taking away, like the trust in the child and saying, okay, when left to your devices, you're not going to learn anything, and you're just gonna be a blob. And that's not really what humans are. We come with more than enough brain cells. We actually lose brain cells, right? Yeah. During the learning process. We're pruning during the learning process. So I think that it's really interesting, that idea of unsettling. And that's just one of I couldn't even capture them all down. So I guess that's a good reason to pick up your book. But that's really interesting. What about the idea of learning social skills? Because unsettling seems like unschooling seems like a very, I don't know, like a Huckleberry Finn, like kind of walking through nature, like learning it yourself type of thing. But what about the ideas of ethics and morality and playing fair and stuff that folks say that comes from being in a school with other people? Do you see that happening in micro schools?
Well, okay, so
because a lot of people are talking about that.
You're talking about two questions. A lot of people ask about homeschooling in the same way. They think that people's children will be the biggest complaint or the biggest objection to homeschooling, and sure. Unschooling is a step beyond that. It's basically saying I'm not going to have specific curriculum. I'm going to allow my child to direct how they want to learn. But one of the big objections to homeschooling of any type is the socialization issue.
Okay.
But if you think about it, a homeschooling family goes out and everything. Basically, when you're a homeschooler or any form of that, learning happens 24/7. I mean, it actually does, regardless of whether you're in school or not. You're always learning. You're always trying new things and learning. It's just that when you homeschool or unschool or road school, the road schooling communities, they, some of them have RVs and travel together. They have Facebook groups where they gather together and say, like, we're all going to go to this XYZ. They have conferences where they meet and gather. The same with the world schooling community. They have conferences where they gather. They bring their children together to learn and have experience together. Cool. So they're, basically those movements are doing a lot of what the micro school movement is doing, just without a physical place to do it. Okay. What I love about the micro school movement is that, for the most part, not all micros have a location. Forest schools, kids are just out in the woods with adults, but micro schools tend to have a physical place where kids can land and, use computers and use physical resources. And, the sort of totally unstructured learning is not the right thing for every kid. So the most important thing is you have to know who your kid is and know what they want and need. It's a rare kid who can really, really flourish as an unschooler, because it takes a lot of personal discipline.
Sure. I'm thinking about, I was in Tallahassee this weekend, and shout out to FSU for bringing me there. But also I got to spend a lot of time with my, with my family, and they've got they've got little ones of their own right now. Mm-hmm. And you can see the difference in communication. You can see, even though they're siblings, you can see the difference in processing. There was one who just wanted to stay in the music room the whole time. My uncle had one of those music rooms, and he just wanted to learn, new songs with me and play karaoke. The other one was sitting there, literally. He could hack into everyone's phones. He could find out our passwords, and he knew how to get into our phones and was taking pictures. He knew how to get onto Amazon and order himself things, order himself a robot and stuff like that. So I think that first point that you made is right. You have to know your kid. It's the same thing as a lot of the rest of our guests who talk about reaching levels of self-actualization. You have to know yourself. Johnny B talks about optimal performance with your body. You have to know when to rest. You have to know your style. And this sounds like the same thing, a certain awareness at the very beginning, right?
Well, so if you're one of those parents who's doing all that for yourself, I said this to you earlier, like, okay, so you're self-aware, you're awake, you're growing and expanding in your knowledge and your wisdom. I want parents to want that for their kids too. I don't want your kids to have to grow up and then go through the same process that you're going through. I want you to create spaces and opportunities for your kids to have that now. And there's a lot of parents who are doing that. There are a lot of amazing parents out there creating alternative programs for kids. So, yoga programs and mindfulness programs. I even do some of that work to push into the schools. But I would imagine what it would be like if that was what you did every day. That you had yoga breaks, you had mindfulness breaks, you had the ability to get up and go take a walk when you wanted to or needed to.
Oh my gosh, I'm already thinking about it. The Mark Cordone Micro School of Greatness for Kids. I love it. Well, let me ask you this then. There's a parent that comes to you, and I'm sure you get this quite a bit. Like, okay, so I just read your book. It looks like my kid might be a great candidate for one of these micro schools, and it looks like the community is a perfect place. What are some steps or some thought pieces that you can walk them through if they were to either consider or be right there on the beginning steps to creating a micro school that is perfect for their kid, and also one that is sustainable towards the community and the environment, or and themselves as well, because they're an entrepreneur.
Yeah, well, so I want to make sure they get the new book when it comes out. Well, actually, they get the new because I literally, Mark, I wrote the book because there are lots of great books out there about how other people have started other kinds of schools. They tell the story of, so-and-so built a school here, so-and-so built a school there. I'm one of those people. I'm like, well, that's a nice story, but how do I do that? I wanted a how-to guide. It was not there. So I wrote it. I worked with 2 clients this fall very intensely on their micro school building process. And while I was working with them on their process, I turned it into a process, into a book. So I have 8 building block steps. So you basically, I'll tell you what they are.
Sure. That'd be awesome.
You have to figure out why you're building a school, why, and you frame it with a plan. So that's the first step. Then the second thing is you take a look at all of the legalities. I call it get the legalities out of the way. You do a deep dive into what does the law say that I must do with my child legally. So you figure that out, and you figure out how you can work within the letter of the law and create a learning space that's different, that allows your child to learn the way that they need to. The next thing you do is you figure out your special sauce. So how is your school going to be different? And Mark, you already said yours, the Mark Cordone School of what did you say, of Greatness?
Mark Cordone School of Greatness, baby.
There you go. And your school's going to be all about figuring that out. I need to hook you up with my friend Corey in Canada, who has a program called the Personal Greatness Project, Mark.
That would be awesome.
The next thing you figure out.
That's where they go for their PhD.
There you go. Next step, location. Are you going to use a space that you already have? That's what a lot of people do. They save money in the beginning and they start, at a church, at home, in a business that they already have set up. Next thing I call show me the money. So you got to figure out how you're going to pay for this. We do a little bit of micro funding up front. We figure out who's got some money that we can go to. We look for nonprofits we can partner with, that kind of thing. And by the way, these are all interchangeable blocks. It's like when you build a building, you usually put the cornerstones in, but you can, as long as you have those foundational blocks down, you don't have to do them in the order. You can do them in the order that works for you. Next one, I call it David versus Goliath. It's curriculum. It's that, what are kids going to learn? How are they going to learn? And I'm really an advocate for, let's not lay it all and map it all out. So I said David versus Goliath because David is the kid wanting to learn his own way, and Goliath is school is like this big monster that, tells him he must do it this way. It's the only way.
Love it. Gotcha.
The next thing you look at are people. People. Who are you going to run the school? Are you going to do the teaching and the instruction? Are you going to hire that out? And I work with my clients to find teachers who are being prepared in new and innovative ways, people who can actually help kids learn this way and aren't going to just teach them directly. And then the last one I call Ready, Set, Go. Now you've got this plan, but we do an action planning sequence where we figure out, now how do I put this business plan that I've created? Because really that's what I help my clients do, is come up with a saleable business plan that you can market, share, promote. People will know what your school is, what it's about, and how do you make that happen? Okay. So basically the book will take you through those 8 steps and help you to create a business plan for your micro school that you can go out there and get going.
That is freaking cool. So let me go through this really quickly and give me feedback on whether or not I'm ready to start the Mark Cordone Micro School of Greatness. So the first thing that you'd have us look at is why us, right?
Yeah, why
and
you?
So yeah, sure. So I think number one is I have an absolute passion for kids. I am a kid. I don't think I ever stop learning. And then when I think it comes to the traditional ideas of education, I mean, I got pretty far in my doctoral program in education. So I say, well, I would know at least a few other things about education, but I also know like how to engage with kids. I think if I had another job, it would be something along the lines of like, being like one of those like, those Australians, I forgot what they're called. The Wiggles. I'd want to be the Asian Wiggle guy with red hair that like makes kids laugh and stuff like that. So do I pass the first one?
You do. The only thing you didn't need that you mentioned was all of that education.
Okay, how about this?
What you have that is the most critical thing is you actually have a passion for kids and you want kids to be having a good time while they're learning. You're Absolutely. You don't have this mindset. And I see it so much that people think, well, I had to go to the neighborhood school and so do you. Well, school wasn't fun for me. Too bad. You have to do that too. And I just think it's time we should drop that shared belief and adopt this belief that life is supposed to be fun as much as you can make it without hurting other people.
So all the stuff that I wish I could put on my resume, I can now. I don't have to put Mark Cordone, doctoral student. I can put like Mark Cordone, like fun guy that loves engaging with kids. That's super cool. Okay, so let's go through a couple other things. David versus Goliath. Yeah. Right. So I want to have a class on decision-making skills and sort of the quick decision-making skills and show that through roller derby. Can we do that?
Why? I mean, the most important thing would be, do the kids want to do that?
That's. I guess I would throw it out to the kids. It's WrestleMania week. How about that? I would do a class where we watch WrestleMania, and then we talk about the ideas of good and evil, sort of socialization, talking about the idea of masking. Are these real people behind the scenes, or is this how they really act? The idea of, so like maybe an intro to sociology class, watching professional wrestling.
There's a lot of but these are all things, but the most important thing is that the kids want this. So you could propose this and say, I have this idea and this is what I'd like to do. And it involves looking at wrestling videos. Would you be up for that? And then if the kids are like, then you go from there. Yeah, it's funny because I think of it like Field of Dreams, that whole idea of build it and they will come. Yeah. There's some of that, but some of it has, I really believe in the, like, if we use Field of Dreams, if Kevin Costner had said to his kids, I have this idea to build a baseball diamond in our cornfield. Would you like to help me? And the kids saying, yeah, let's go do that. And then while you're out there, you're like measuring the baseball field and you're calculating the amount of sod that needs to be put down and how much you're going to charge the people when they come and sit in the stands. And are you going to sell Coke and how much are you going to charge it for? How much does Costco charge for that? And how much profit can I make? And, you know, all those kind of things, instead of just Kevin Costner building it and then the kids getting to come and sit there in the stands.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just to throw those things out, I was thinking about things that either my son or my cousins had told me about this week that they wanted to learn more about, not sociology, but more along the lines of, Daddy, can we watch WrestleMania? And I'm like, yeah, of course we can. But rather than making it a sort of passive act of just watching it, there can be micro school or not, there can be these lessons that can happen. Like you were saying, learning always happening at all times, right? Donnie Day, thank you for liking the video. It's good to see you, brother. Donnie, I know that you got a little one. Would you be interested? What micro school would you have for your little one, Donnie?
Let's brainstorm all the crazy micro school ideas.
Let's brainstorm some micro schools. What would you call it? And what would be the David versus Goliath? Now, also at the same time, so I tried to go through a couple of those, but then there was some logistical things. When it comes to soup to nuts, it looks like this is an ongoing process of micro schooling. It's not like you have a plan and then there's a micro school. Like with the Maryland project, there was a sort of a transition and an evolution. But what type of timeline do you look at with your clients who want to create a micro school or a micro schooling system?
Yeah, so usually people are surprised to find out that you can do it in less than a year. And that's really my goal, is to have it happen in less than a year. Now, one of the things that's funny is because it's now April. So people will go like this: April, May, June, July, August, September. I have 6 months to get my micro school ready. But that's also part of the mentality that I want to see change. That we believe that school has to open in September.
Yeah.
You know, if you had 3 kids, if I had 3 kids show up here at my doorstep today, I literally could begin teaching them tomorrow, because I happen to know legally in the state of Pennsylvania, I can tutor up to 4 children without having to identify myself as a school. So that's one of the ways I work with my clients within the letter of the law. You know, you don't have to get it all done and all perfect up front. You begin with a few kids. And what's really cool is if you begin with a couple of kids at the start, you get the kids involved in laying out the other pieces of the school. What kind of theme, what kind of name do we have? They love things like, do we have a mascot? Do we need a website? You know, how are we going to show the world what we're learning? You know, are we... I know one of my clients, my Maryland client, is having a young person that I know you know, who has his own YouTube channel. Well, that kid is going to have YouTube is going to be part of his learning. He will be using his YouTube channel to document the things he's learning and to share what he's learning with the world. There's no more powerful way to show what you know than to teach someone else.
That's really awesome. And the idea of having everyone engaged in co-creation of the actual school. I mean, you are talking about one of the, when we're talking about just straight theories, one of the strongest ways to create a sense of membership in a community is to be an influencer who is someone that is creating that sense of membership. Yeah. And so to have both the student, who would, again, sort of be the person in maybe a traditional system, a more traditional system, being sort of in a passive role, now being in an active role of being like, hey, you want to have a school like a school alma mater song or something? Let's write it together, Or
like how crazy is that? Yeah, let's pick our colors. Let's design our mascot. School fight song. That's pretty fun. And then record it.
That's absolutely awesome. What a way to really empower somebody and let them know that they're not going through a system and they're not going to be invisible for a few years. They're going to be right up there. We want to know what they have to say, and we are engaged with them just like they are engaged with us. That is really, really, really cool. I think the idea also, I once read this article. I used to be on the University Senate for Wellness at the school that I worked at. And I found this amazing article on how you can actually create systems that engage people in well-being activities or sense of belonging. And again, it was a bottom-up approach. And that's what I'm hearing you say, Mara.
Yeah.
Hey, if they want wrestling, then teach it. But like, don't go and create the Mark School of Greatness based on what Mark wants. It's again what the students want, what they can co-create with you.
Yeah, it's interesting, Mark. I find it over and over again, and I'm glad you actually said what you said, because we as adults, we didn't get anybody asking us, for the most part, what we wanted or what would have worked for us. And it's actually, my first book was, a lot of it was catharsis. It was the book that I wish my parents had read when I was a kid, because I was very strong-willed. I knew what I wanted to do. People told me I was selfish, but it's not really true. I just knew what I wanted to do. I didn't know how to go about doing that. And I didn't have anybody helping me to actualize those internal passions that I had. I mean, some of the time they were, but I want kids to have that all of the time. It doesn't mean that we're going to build schools where they're never going to be challenged and things aren't going to be hard. I mean, they are. Yeah. But on the flip side, I think that if we are getting kids interested, when you allow a kid to investigate something that they're interested in, there's no stopping them. They'll do it on their own time. They'll do it on their own time. I even do that. I do it professionally. I still train teachers. I teach master's level coursework, and I do it as inquiry. So I basically say to the teachers, here's the ideas we need to look at this next 6 weeks. You go do the research in the area that you want to on that topic and share it back with all of us. And it's amazing to me. They work 10 times harder than they ever would if I said, read these 10 articles and then tell me what the articles said.
Yep. Now you're going into total nerd world with me, and I'm sorry that I'm bringing the audience with me, but you're talking about like full on self-determination theory here, right?
I am.
And self-determination theory is sort of one of the gold standards that we want to reach in education, because self-determination theory is that idea that like, I study what I study because I'm passionate about it. And not only is it hard for me, but it's fun for me. And those two things combined equal this idea of resilience and flow and tenacity and creativity. It's the exact theory that they use in video games. So when people are like, nah, video games are worthless. Well, they took self-determination theory from sort of the education folks and said, how can we make a game out of this? And in the same way, isn't that what life is? Kind of a game where we're trying to figure some things out. We're curious about things. We learn something and we apply it. Then with something we level up. I want to learn how to do it on a different level now. I want to learn how to transfer that to a different domain in my life. What a cool idea. Now I wanted to move over from nerdland and go over to another thing then. I want to go into the idea of, let's say that you're a person, you're like, my son would be, or my daughter would be perfect for this. I would be the right person. I think I could round up a few people who would be sort of great educators for the school. But then I have a large community, but I don't necessarily see a lot of buy-in, because I'm in Tampa, I'm in Florida right now, so technically speaking, I'm in one of those places that has carte blanche, but I'm also in a place that's heavy duty in the traditional school settings right now, the private, the public schools, those sort of things. How can you work with folks in terms of getting this message out? And sort of helping other parents or even other students, right, realize that there's other options out there, and this is something that could be a viable option. How do you look at buy-in?
Well, okay, so you asked me two different things.
I'm sorry, I'm asking.
No, you asked me. Okay,
barrel questions today. Yeah.
Where you are, where there's little buy-in, I would say to you, that's what makes micro schools so beautiful, because you can start with as small as 2, 3, 4 kids. What I do when I walk people through the process, and it's in the book, is you do a little brainstorming around a budget. You figure out what you need to be making to make this work. You look at all of the components you're going to need, and you look at the tuition that people are charging at the best private schools near you, and you find some number that meets your revenue needs for running this business, and also gives people a saner alternative than maybe the private schools. You go to places where like-minded people gather. You go to your coffee houses, or it tends to be, you will find people who will think this way, at your coffee houses, at your poetry slams, at your meetups, at your music events, your live music events, those kind of things. Okay. You look in your community to find out, you go and see if there's a homeschool resource center, and you start to talk to parents there, and you talk with them about, now I will tell you, our people who go down that route of homeschool make huge sacrifices, because they have to give up one of the parents having a job and having a salary in order for that parent to educate the children. This, I think, is this amazing alternative to that. So you're providing an education for your child and some other folks' children, and you're generating some revenue. So you're not giving up your ability to have a job that pays. So you can reach out to your homeschool communities, but you might find some roadblocks there, because once people have made that sacrifice for their child, sometimes they're not as willing to pay for a school. They might collaborate with you on opening a school. Sure. But it's just apples and oranges. They're different ways of looking at it.
Now, you talked about the micro school movement. And are there things like micro school conferences?
Good question. So the movement, I sort of named it that because I want to see it become that. But there is an organization that I've been part of for a while called the Alternative Education Resource Organization, AERO, AERO. And AERO has been around for 30 years. And they have been championing the cause of alternative education. So helping people to open democratic and free schools and Montessori schools and Waldorf schools. And they actually they don't run a micro school, but they run a school builders course every year in the fall. And I took it a couple years ago, and it's great. It's a little on the academic side for me. The biggest objection I had was that they offer it once a year in the fall. And I wanted there to be this thing that you could go to, and you would find it on the bookshelf in the library, and you would find it in the bookstore. And if today you decided you wanted to build a school, you would have that resource available, and you could start today. They hold a conference every year. I'm actually going to have an unconference that's happening next weekend up in Connecticut at a really amazing it's not even a school, it's a micro school. It's an alternative learning space. It's called Workspace. I think it's called Workspace, and it's in Connecticut. And it's this red barn where people who have their kids listed as homeschoolers can go and have access to amazing maker spaces and mentors. And then they're having a full-on conference at the end of June on Long Island at Long Island University. I'll be presenting at both places on micro schools. Right on. But that's an amazing place, especially that conference at the end of June. And their keynote speaker is the son of A.S. Neal, who founded Summerhill School in England. And it's one of the most radical alternative education schools that you'll ever read about. And it's still running. He started it in the 1930s, and it's still running. And his grandson is the principal of the school, and he'll be there talking about Summerhill.
Right on, right on. So obviously you're a resource in this. And what's a way that we can with Irish twins in the subject. What's a way that we can keep in touch with you?
Facebook is probably the best way. Okay. You can friend me, you can join the micro school builders group, but you can just friend me or PM me. You can email me. mlineberger@gmail.com. I'm not particularly famous, so people are people are welcome to still email me. I can handle that. I do all my calls, all my own emails.
Awesome. And I don't know if we talked about this, but your new book, the second in the book on, it's basically the Micro School Builder's Guide, right?
School Builder's Handbook.
Handbook is coming out next Tuesday, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 1 o'clock p.m., I believe.
1 o'clock p.m. Now, you did give us a little insight into those 8 steps, but is there any way any of us could get a little bit more in on that action before the first or the next week?
Yeah, you want the book today? Go to Micro School Builders on Facebook, ask to join. That book's in there, and believe it or not, this book is in there. They're both in digital form. Okay. You can't smell this beautiful book in a Facebook group.
You can't. You can take any book you want and smell it, though. You can take the free book I'm giving you from Bruce D. Schneider, and you can do that. But yeah.
Both books are in the Micro School Builders group. You can come join the group. But what's really cool about the group is it's not just people who wanted to read the book. There are actually some micro school builders in the group, people who have already built schools. So where it started out as a group to promote the launch of this second book, the first book and the second book, it's now turning into a community of people who are either interested in building micro schools or who have already built micro schools to connect and collaborate.
That's absolutely really cool. I'm going to check it out because I just love the concept and I want to learn more. I also need to ask you this. Who's behind your back there?
Who's that?
Yeah.
That's a piece of that. You know, it's funny. I had a picture of my book there for a while, and then I got tired of looking at the little girl with the boxing glove. So that's actually, I do stained glass. I'm one of those Renaissance women. This is a piece of stained glass. It's a piece that I did after I saw the full solar eclipse last summer.
Right on. So maybe if kids wanted have you ever done a stained glass in a micro school class?
I've done stained glass with kids. Yes, actually many times. Yes,
that's fantastic.
But probably as little. I think the littlest kid I ever had working glass was 5.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So you have not said enough. We need to hear more of you. But in the time being, let's get you to launch this book. Take care of that other book that's going into the stands in May. You're going to see Linaberger everywhere in the next couple of weeks, online and in bookstores. But thank you for being on the show. Everybody, I want you to like this. I want you to send this out to folks, and let them chew on these ideas for a bit. Let them find out for themselves what's best. You know, like Mara was talking about earlier. Now, given that, do you know why the name of the show is called The Golden Mic? Oh, this is perfect. You don't.
No, I don't.
So this is how we end every show. So we're going from a micro school to a macro population now. And so we're going to do a quick visualization. I first wanted to thank you for coming on the show. And as the show is coming to a close, I want you to imagine a golden mic is coming down from your ceiling. Oh, and it's so perfect because it's right there, right next to your stained glass, right? And it's hanging there. And for 2 minutes, it translates into every language all across the world. So when I hit the switch, you're going to go live. What is it that you're going to say? And go.
Well, that's amazing. Mark, thank you so much for sharing your platform with me today. It means a lot to me that someone with as much passion as you have would give me a chance to talk to your people, because really there is not enough. This message needs to get out there that our kids are different. Our kids are really different. They're different than we were. They want different things. They think differently. learn differently than we did. And our schools that we've built, that were built, the ones that we all went to, don't fit a lot of them. And so I'm really on a mission to create a whole set of new schools. And I was telling Mark earlier, my epic mission is in the next 20 years, I want to help co-create at least, I'm going to even go beyond my original measure, Mark. I said 100. I want to create at least 100 micro schools in the next 20 years, the kind of schools that get kids really excited to get up in the morning, that make them want to go and learn, that make them not even feel like they're in school. And a step beyond that is I'm going to create these gatherings for these schools to come together on a regular basis, kids to meet one another from all over the globe. I kind of visualize it as the first global school district on this planet, if you can even imagine that.
Absolutely love it. You can drop the golden mic if you feel like, oh, we'll do the high five. Don't drop it. It's gold. No, just kidding. You've said it all. And just to tie it all up, not to take anything away from you, but just so many things are coming together and integrating for me right now. The first chapter, or the first line of the first chapter of my book, Beyond Resilience, said, on your worst day, what is it that still drives you to get you out of bed in the morning and be excited, right? And we ask that for ourselves, but yeah, it's time to ask that for our kids too. They deserve that. So I'm going to reframe that question in closing. On their worst day, what is it that gets your kid out of bed and is to be excited about life on any given day? Because our kids aren't working for money. They're not going through the rat race like we are. We owe it to them to live a life of passion and discovery. Mara, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being on the show. I hope you come back. This is a woman on a mission. This is a woman who's dropping 2 Irish kids off at your local bookstore and also on a digital bookstore near you. This has been the 21st episode of Beyond the Golden Mic Live. I still haven't gotten it right, so I got to still rehearse it. I'll get better. But thank you for joining us. Watch the replay, y'all. Share it out. And thank you, Mara. We'll see you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye. Yeah, you're welcome.